The pandemic has had some very specific impacts on employee engagement, including employees' expectations about flexibility in their schedule and the ability to work remotely. One key element of this change is the fact that hundreds of thousands of employees have been working at home since early 2020. Close at hand with their children, their spouse, and their pets, and the prospect of going back to an office 40 hours a week is not very appealing, especially when they have obviously demonstrated an ability to get much of the work done remotely. There is also growing evidence that productivity has increased slightly under these conditions. Surveys of employee sentiment on going back to work indicate that over 90% expect some flexibility in their schedule even after the pandemic is over. COVID may have advanced the future of work far more quickly than anyone could imagine. In spite of some of the positive aspects of not working in an office, many employees working remotely have increased a sense of isolation in their work, and their fear and stress levels have also been pushed higher. We've been helping managers understand and cope with fear within their teams, and we start by just helping them understand fear in a deeper and more helpful way. One of the reasons fear is so powerful as an emotion is because embedded in it is a perception of threat, and threat has control precedence in the brain. What does that mean, control precedence? It means that once threat is triggered, whether real or imagined, the response to that threat supersedes just about every other behavioral brain function. The limbic system in the brain is hypervigilant about threat, so once fear takes hold, it can feel all-consuming, and it is an outsized distraction. The brain also has a clear tendency to focus on preparing for the worst-case scenario, and this certainly perpetuates anxiety and can lead to behaviors referred to as unhealthy coping. Fear is also contagious. It can easily be shared with others, especially children. One key point I try to make with managers about fear is that the feeling is real. It should not be discounted as childish or unnecessary or even unprofessional. What managers can do, though, is help employees understand that while the feeling is real, the consequences we imagine may not be. I recently debriefed one of our client companies that had just purchased another organization and was merging this new company into their own. In our survey tool, we asked employees what was the first thing that came to mind when you heard you were being purchased by another company. Many of the employees of the acquired company stated that the first thing that came to mind was that there would be layoffs and that they might be fired. The feeling of fear around being terminated is real, but in fact, the consequences were not, as the acquiring company had no intention of letting people go. The point I would have for managers in this case is not to dismiss the fear that employees felt, but to come alongside it, empathize with it, and then move what they're thinking to other possibilities, such as, this will create enormous opportunity for us to be aligned with this new company. Many managers would simply dismiss the fear. I want them to come alongside it, again, empathize and understand it, and then move employees to a new view. While feelings of fear are real, they are not facts. Employees are much more likely to make inaccurate meaning about their circumstances when fear is escalated. Also, working remotely in a more isolated environment can also intensify fear, largely as a result of having fewer opportunities to interact with others, to share, and learn from their own experiences. I have also been impressing upon leaders that memories, fear-based memories, can last a lifetime. That is, memories that we record at times where fear is escalated may remain with us forever. Another way to look at this is that in this time, when fear has heightened, leaders and colleagues should be very mindful of how they interact with each other, because it may leave a lasting imprint, especially if it is negative or just unsupportive. One piece of good news about fear: it is containable. It dissipates most effectively through human connection. what neuroscientists refer to as load sharing. If we can share our fears and learn from others' fears and how they cope with them, then we can interrupt the grip that fear can hold on us. This is why leaders should be talking to their employees, both collectively in teams and individually, about situations that can trigger fear to talk it out. When individuals have to cope with fear alone, in isolation, it can grow unchecked, and in the workplace, it can lead to significant decreases in focus, productivity, and attunement. When we consider the impact of a pandemic, and many experts say there will be more, leaders should understand the impact of the stressors on employees. Let me list just a few. First, a viral threat is invisible, and as a result, stress is elevated because the brain can't see the danger approaching. A change of routine and embracing a new norm can increase stress. The need to work at all at some points in a pandemic adds stress as employees feel the urge to protect themselves and their families. There is stress as they consider potential job loss for themselves or others. For some, it is an issue of personal capacity. Can I handle this? How can I get through this? Of course, having to live in a way that is isolating, where we are separated from our loved ones, heightens stress. The potential of harm to themselves or to loved ones can be very stressful, as can parenting and partnering during a pandemic. Sadly, we have seen both spousal and child abuse increase during the pandemic. I would also add simply tolerating disorientation as a result of the conditions created in a pandemic can be a major source of stress. Now, some of these stressors may feel obvious to you, but what are the impacts on the workplace? High levels of stress can lead to less mental capacity. We are literally less able to solve problems and get work done, and to innovate. Many employees report feeling depleted and exhausted much earlier in the day than they have ever before, and they have difficulty focusing. They feel preoccupied. Our individual faults and fears can be elevated and expanded. What does that mean? For example, let's say someone has, in their lifetime, had anger management issues, but they have discovered various interventions, yoga, diet, therapy, that have helped them keep it in check. When stress is high, these behavioral checks and balances may fall by the wayside, and this is especially important for managers who demonstrate less patience, empathy, and just general support of employees because of their own stress levels. Lastly, the more stressed we become, the higher threat vigilance becomes. There are specific things managers can do to mitigate stress, and first and foremost on that list is to create and maintain safe and secure connections among team members. Feeling connected to important others can interrupt a panic attack. As a manager, I'm going to want to increase opportunities for connection whenever practical and possible. Being consistent and providing a source of consistency and predictability in employees' lives can be very helpful. So managers should maintain regular meeting intervals, client contacts, and just maintain their normal job tasks and pace. Predictability and clarity, especially from leaders, can help mitigate stress. One CEO shared with me their approach early on in the pandemic that he called his 4, 4, and 12 strategy. He would hold a monthly all-hands virtual call where he would explain what he believed would happen over the next 4 weeks. He explained that he had the most certainty about the next 4 weeks. And by the way, no one will be let go during that time. He then repeated that for the next 4 months, where he explained that he had less clarity, but he was pretty sure this is what the next 4 months would look like. And, oh, by the way, no one's going to be let go. And then he talked about the next 12 months and what he thought was likely to happen. What he was doing that is so effective, and this relates directly to fear, is he was reducing what might have been considered possible as a result of the pandemic, like being fired, to what was probable. Employees could go home and tell their families that their job was secure for at least the next 4 months, and that they would be okay, and that they would know more in another month at the next all-hands meeting. Leaders can also offer hope and reassurance. Simply telling employees that you believe things will be okay, that we'll all get through this. Offering encouragement can also be very helpful when simply saying something like, look, we have faced some pretty big challenges before, and we met them head on, and I believe we can do that again. Fortunately, we also have wonderful connection technology available to us today, whether it's Zoom or Microsoft Teams and similar products that allow us to not only talk to each other, but to see each other. We have been strongly suggesting to managers in our client companies that when they do Zoom calls, that employees have their cameras on whenever possible. We need to be able to see the faces of our team members, and when we do see them, for example, looking safe and healthy, that can be reassuring.